In this video, we are going to talk about rounding to a given number of decimal places. These are the exchange rates of American dollars, euros, and pounds against TL. Now, whatever my currency is, right, in one of those, I want these to be used precisely because I want exact exchange rates for my money. So if the person who would change my money will consider, for example, American dollars, right? So if I have $10, if they consider scrapping this 45 at the end and write 6.15, well, I could be okay with that, all right? And that would end up with 61.5 TL, right? If, on the other hand, I was to have 10 euros, right, it would go like 7.22. Well, this is where I have to say no. This is not supposed to be 2, because you can see that after 2 comes 7, which is a little bit too much to scrap, right? What happens is, if you have 7.2276, a number like that, and if you want to round it from here so that you will have 2 decimal places when you round it up, just because the part on the right hand side is too much to scrap, you consider this as a whole and add it here as, one more to go. So instead of writing 7.22, I would ask the person in charge to change it to 7.23, right? Because this is too much to scrap. So I'm going to end up, well, it's not going to be a big difference for my 10 euros because I'm going to have 72.3 TL instead of 2. So it's 10 kurush more. But if you were to have 100,000 euros instead, then this will be a huge amount, so that it is very important. Then what I would get in TL would be 100,000 times 7.23, right? Then it's going to be 723,000 TL, right? And the difference would be around 1000 TL, whom otherwise would the exchange office would get, right? This is very important. You would lose 1000 TL. So let's look at this example to understand how rounding is performed. So let's say round these numbers to 2 decimal places. So D and P are the initials for decimal places. So if you see the question like that, round these numbers to 2dp, this means 2 decimal places. Now, let's look at this number, 14.2573. Now, 14.2573 has the first decimal place and second decimal place to be 2 and 5, and you cut it from here. This means you don't want the rest of the number. Now, the thing is, if this number is a little bit too much, 7 and 3 here in this case, you can't just scrap it. You have to consider adding 1 to this number, because you can't just scrap it. It's not that small, right? It will make a difference, as you saw in the previous example. So you just add 1 and end up saying that that's going to be 14.26. So that's the rounded form of this number. Now this is simpler compared to the given number 14.2573, and it may be easier to work on this number 14.26. So rounding is really necessary at some point. For the second one, right, it is 0.0258, and we are rounding it to 2 decimal places. So it's the first decimal place, second decimal place. I cut it from here. Now, This number is 5, and the rule is if it is 5 or bigger, then you have to add 1 again here. So it's going to be 0.03 as rounded. So the rule is when you have a number bigger than 5 or 5 itself, then you add 1 to round the number, otherwise you don't add anything. Now consider this as seesaw, right? So if you have 0.025 in the middle, alright? So if your number is on this side of the seesaw, of course it's gonna go like this, showing this number, which is 0.02. This is the number you have to round to. So if your number is, say, 0.023, which would be here, then the seesaw will be on this side, right, showing this number. Now, if your number is, as in here, 2.258, it's slightly on the right hand side, right, of the seesaw, so the seesaw will go this side, indicating that you have to round to 0.03. Okay, so you can consider this as, you know, a seesaw going in both directions according to where the number is. When it is in the middle, it still indicates there, because 5 is also big enough for scrapping, so you have to add 1 and say 0.03 as rounded, right? Now let's see other examples. Let's say we are rounding these numbers to the nearest whole, meaning the nearest whole number. This means I don't want any decimal places, so I'm going to cut it from the decimal point. So I'm going to scrap this bit. I don't want this bit. So it's gonna be, just because the number to the right of where I cut it is 2, which is less than 5, I'm going to consider the rounding as 14. So this number will be 14 approximately, and when I cut it from here, the number to the right is 0, so that's approximately 0, as you know, a rounded number. If I round these numbers to 1 decimal place, then this is where I cut the number after 2, right? And to the right of where I cut the number is 5, so I should add 1 to 2, so it's going to be roughly 14.3. And here, if I cut it from here after the first decimal place, then I have 2 here, which is less than 5, so I can't add anything, so my number will be 0.0. Now notice that just because it's 0, I can say, okay, I'm going to write 0, not 0.0. But the question is asking you to round the number to 1 decimal place. So you should have 1 decimal place in your number. So the actual answer is not 0, but 0.0. This is very important when it comes to rounding decimal places. If they're asking you to round it to a certain number of decimal places, your answer must have that number of decimal places regardless of what that digits are, right? So the answer will be 0.0 here, because we want 1 decimal place. Now is your turn. In each question, the number of decimal places you're supposed to round the given numbers are placed. So you'll round the first number given to 3 decimal places, and number 5 will be 1 decimal place, and so on. So solve the questions on your book and submit your answers online. Thank you.